好，歡迎大家嚟到。
Welcome to the press briefing. We give you half a minute to take photos. And let me introduce the 4 secretaries present. We have Dr. Law Chi Kwong, Secretary for Labour and Welfare, Professor Sophia Chan, Secretary for Food and Health, Mr. Kevin Yeung, Secretary for Education, as well as Mr. Casper Choi, Secretary for Home Affairs. In a moment, the 4 secretaries will first will speak according to the order I just read out, and then they will take questions from members. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Secretaries, please be seated. I'll first give you Dr. Law Chi Kwong, Secretary for Labour and Welfare, to brief the floor on initiatives related to the PA. Thank you very much. This term of government has spared no efforts in improving welfare, elderly and childcare services, and labor benefits. I'm going to highlight how the government helps the elderly, working families, childcare, and improvement in labor, welfare, and occupational safety, and also important legislative amendments to be introduced in the coming year. Now, in terms of improving people's livelihood, now for this fiscal year alone, the recurrent expenditure has exceeded $100 billion already. Compared with the first year of this term of government, the increase is over 62%, and the greatest increase is seen in elderly care services by 85% and rehabilitation services 66%, and also total recurrent expenditure on cash welfare has risen by 56%. Now, for our legislative work, we expect that in the coming year, we're going to introduce an amendment bill to improve the quality of services provided by residential care homes for the elderly and persons with disabilities. We hope to be able to do so in the first quarter of next year. And then the government has set up a cross-bureaus working group to engage stakeholders, and it's also announced in the policy address that we're going to introduce legislative proposals to establish a mandatory reporting mechanism for child abuse cases. We'll continue to consult stakeholders and also enhance the training of practitioners to enhance their ability to identify such cases. And we will also introduce bills to the Council for abolition of offsetting of long service payments and severance payment in MPF. We will also introduce a brand new bill to provide for a compulsory savings scheme for meeting employers' potential severance payment and long service payment expenses following the abolition of offsetting arrangement. And then in the next legislative session, we are going to introduce an amendment bill to raise penalties for occupational safety and health offenses. On enhancing support for the needy elderly, the policy address also announced that our target is at the second half of next year, merge the normal and higher old age living allowance. We will adopt a more lenient asset limits. Currently, it's 365,000. And then eligible persons will be granted a higher OALA, which is currently $3,815. The relevant allowance will probably be adjusted according to inflation. I will also consider how we can explore the absence limit under the pre-application one-year continuous residence requirement of the Social Security Assistance Scheme, including the OH allowance and old age living allowance, so that elderly persons who choose to retire in the Greater Bay Area will have more flexibility. On enhancing support for needy families, as we all know, after 2 rounds of enhancements and adjustment, the Working Family Allowance Scheme has seen a growth of 124% in the number of cases. Now, from now to May next year, or actually starting from June this year to May next year, will relax the working hour requirements to benefit more households. For pro-child policies, we have introduced a lot of measures to strengthen childcare services, and that includes incorporation of the planning ratio for aided childcare services into the Hong Kong planning standards and guidelines. We will provide more childcare service places. We've enhanced the manning ratio of childcare centers and level of subsidies. We've also introduced childcare center parents subsidy. We will continue to re-engineer 90 mutual help childcare centers to provide after-school care service to pre-primary children. Another important measure of this term of government is to regularize a pilot scheme, and that is the on-site preschool rehabilitation services. So we've increased the number of places from 3,000 in 2018 to 9,000 this year, for further increase to 10,000 in the next school year. By then, the waiting time will be 0 for such services. And we believe that because of the effectiveness of this scheme, the waiting time for early intervention and centers will also be 0. So the waiting time for such services will gradually be 0. Starting from last year, we have commenced the pilot project on Tier 1 support services in KGs or KG-CCCs. We'll talk about preschool children waiting for services, or those with marginal growth or marginal development delay, and they can take part in the pilot scheme. Our target is to integrate this project with the on-site preschool rehabilitation services scheme, because the OPRS has a capacity of over 10% for preschool children waiting for services, so we can incorporate the 2 schemes. Now, for enhancing labor welfare, the most important point is, of course, to submit a bill to the Council to abolish the offsetting arrangement under MPF. Our target is still to do it in January next year. We are working in full steam to prepare the drafting of the bill and other preparatory work. After abolishing the offsetting arrangement, we want to help employers to be able to transit to this new arrangement smoothly. So we have proposed a refined government subsidy scheme. In 2018, we proposed a subsidy scheme, and under the refined model, government financial commitment will be more or less the same, and the subsidy will last for 25 years. The main purpose of the refinement is to make the calculation of subsidies simpler and easier to understand, and employers can ascertain in advance the amount of subsidy to be received. The old scheme is a bit hard to understand and uncertain. So the refined scheme will provide more support to micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. In the first few years, we're going to have a cap amount. So employers would know the maximum amount of spending on, let's say, $500,000 of SP and SP per year, and that would be easier for employers to make plans. Soon there will be a briefing on this to help employers to understand the arrangement better.
In terms of promoting occupational safety and health, of course, we must try to reduce the number of industrial accidents through the promotion of the construction design and management mode, and also to enhance safety of above ground work and renovation and repair works of residential units, which is 3 to 3 meters above ground. Besides reducing chances of industrial accidents, another approach is that we need to amend legislation to raise penalties for OSH offenses so that a greater deterrent effect can be achieved. Should industrial accidents happen, we also need to try to step up rehabilitation for the victims. And we are in the final stages of our work. Hopefully by early next year, we can launch a 3-year pilot rehabilitation program for employees injured at work. Hopefully it could be launched smoothly. Another demand from the labor sector is the continuous contract requirement. That is 418. 4 weeks of employment with 18 hours of work per week. The government had discussed it before, but there was no consensus reached. We will review this requirement to try to balance availability of employers and interests of employees so that we can deal with continuous contract more in a more flexible way. So on the PowerPoint slide, you can see our new initiatives. I'm not going into detail, but I'm happy to answer your questions later on. So I'll hand over the time to my colleague. Okay, so media friends and members of the public, I'm going to brief you now on the policy address. Is initiatives related to healthcare and agriculture and fisheries. And I want to take you through our key policy initiatives. And the current term of government will continue to allocate resources and focus on the following areas. First is primary healthcare, the overall development. There are 3 key points. As you all know, earlier on, 2 years ago in Kwai Ching, we set up the first district health center. With our efforts, we've also planned for the development of district health centers in Shamshipil, which opened this year. Wong Tai Sin, Tsuen Wan Southern District, Yunnan in Tsuen Wan, and also in the remaining 11 districts, there will be transitional smaller scale DHCs. So this is the hardware and the services provided. Another key initiative is to continue to improve the services provided by the DHC. In the Shim Shui Po DHC, there will be a plan to incorporate private sector so that people diagnosed for the first time with diabetes or hypertension, they can receive medical consultation service. And thirdly, we will have a comprehensive review. We've launched it already for better planning various aspects of primary healthcare development, so as to map out a blueprint for the future development of primary healthcare services. As I said earlier, we are about to launch a consultation to see the blueprint. And we also, under the current term of government, we would issue the blueprint and listen to the views of stakeholders. And secondly, for the entire public healthcare system, we need to make continuous improvement to it. In the past 21 months, our anti-pandemic work has continued, and at different stages, we have carried out reviews and adjusted the plan in accordance with particular needs. And to enhance the high level of profession and professionalism and efficiency, we need to continue to make improvement. So in the Department of Health, in the formulation of public health strategies, and we will continue to strengthen that. And we also support the development and research of drugs, and to enhance the Department of Health capability to cater for the future development of our society and also large-scale public health events. And we also support the hospital authority in expanding and enhancing their hospital services. We have two 10-year development plan, and we will improve efficiency and quality of service. Thirdly, about prevention and control of diseases, we spare no effort. As you know earlier on, for chronic diseases, we have prevention plans and also strategies targeting cancer. We will also review the implementation experience of the first Hong Kong strategy and action plan on antimicrobial resistance. Actually, we launched various measures already, and we'll sum up our experiences gained and decide on another 5-year plan. And we also implement the Hong Kong Viral Hepatitis Action Plan 2020-2024. All the action items will be kick-started. And thirdly, in September, for some eligible women, we rolled out breast cancer screening pilot scheme. We'll continue with that work. As for mental health, the government in July this year launched the Mental Health Initiatives Funding Scheme. We invited relevant NGOs and tertiary institutions to submit proposals. We expect to approve those projects within the 2021-22 year. Development of Chinese medicine is another key policy initiative of ours. Mainly, there are 5 points involved. Firstly, we will take forward the preparatory work for the commissioning of the Chinese Medicine Hospital. And we also take forward the preparatory work for the establishment of the permanent government Chinese Medicine Testing Institute. And we also continue in 18 Chinese medicine clinics, training and research centers, provide government-subsidized outpatient services. We'll provide quotas for that. And thirdly, on the Chinese Medicine Development Fund, you know that we have a 500 million fund, and we have carried out a review and launched products under the fund. And since the fund has been operating for some years, we'll carry out review and try to optimize its schemes and make good use of the resources. And we also look into empowering Chinese medicine practitioners to prescribe diagnostic radiology and laboratory tests for the patients in the Greater Bay Area, and how we're integrating into the overall development of the nation. We will continue to encourage the Chinese medicine sector to try to see what they can do and pursue development in the Greater Bay Area. For example, simplifying the procedures for prescribed choice medicine to be sold in GBA. And the sixth point is support for patients in need. The government and the hospital authority will continue to enhance the means test mechanism for the Samaritan Fund and Community Care Fund so as to ease the burden of medication for patients' families. Hong Kong Genome Project commenced in July 2021 this year, and in 2022 we'll begin the main phase of the Genome Project. For end-of-life care, we completed public consultation on legislative proposals on advanced directives and dying in place. And the relevant law drafting work is underway. Of course, sustainable development of the healthcare system involves, of course, people, healthcare professionals, and their professional development. So you may notice that the Medical Registration Amendment Bill 2021 was scrutinized.
And will allow qualified, non-locally trained doctors to practice in Hong Kong. We hope that the bill can resume its second reading and then third reading in the Council soon. And we will propose legislative amendments to allow patients to have direct access to healthcare professional services such as physiotherapy and occupational therapy without a doctor's referral. And we will make continuing professional education and continuous professional development a mandatory requirement for supplementary medical professionals under the Supplementary Medical Professional Ordinance, as well as nurses and dentists. We'll also explore the feasibility of introducing a statutory registration regime for those healthcare professionals who are currently not subject to any statutory registration requirements, such as clinical psychologists, speech therapists, and dietitians. Supporting development of life and health technology is very important. Now, life and health technology is a very important element. So in terms of clinical data, clinical trials, and drug registration, we will do our best to support the development of life and health technology. HA will provide a dedicated structure to facilitate more institutions to explore the potential use of healthcare data for R&D collaboration with HA and make use of a wider network of HA hospitals to research and clinical trial purposes. It will also expedite the legislative process for registering drugs containing new chemical or biological entity under the Pharmacy and Poisons regulations to support the development of life and health technology. Lastly, to emerge from the epidemic. Now, we have strictly adhered to the strategy of guarding against the importation of cases and the resurgence of local infections. With scientific justifications, we will adjust our anti-epidemic strategy in light of experience. Now, we will review and take stock of our experience and adjust our control measures as appropriate. Lastly, I'd like to turn to food, environmental hygiene, and agriculture and fisheries. Now, we all want to have public markets, and we are taking forward various new market projects, including a temporary market in Tung Chung Town Center. Some markets take a long time to be commissioned, and so we will have a temporary market first, and we will also have new market projects in different districts of Hong Kong. And we will also take forward the market modernization program, including overhauling older markets. And the first one to go is Aberdeen Market. It has already started and is expected to be completed within next year. Environmental hygiene is also important. We have four major areas. First, to control rodent infestation. We'll continue to use technology for surveillance and also eradication of mosquitoes. and we'll have a more targeted approach. And the second is rodent control. Of course, that require interdepartmental cooperation. The Housing Department and the FEHD have set up high-level joint working group to carry out measures to control rodent infestation in public housing estates. And in November, in 3 areas, including Sham-Shui, Wan Chai, and Yunlong, we're going to carry out an enhanced version of anti-rodent operations in designated target areas. And we'll cover public markets and also some black spots. The third area is public toilet. In the past 2 years, the FEHD has been actively implementing the enhanced public toilet refurbishment program. We have covered 9. We have started the commencement of facelifting work for 90 public toilets, with 50 of them completed, and we will use utilization technologies and pilot a smart PT system. And then on food safety, we have reviewed food safety regulation relating to veterinary drug residues, and our target is to complete the review next year. And the second area is just as important, and that is to enhance the protection of nutrition and health of infants and young children below the age of 36 months. We'll review the regulatory arrangement on composition and related labeling requirements, as well as the nutrition and health claims for formula products for infants and young children. We will take reference from international practices, and we will also engage stakeholders and the public. As for agriculture and fisheries and animal welfare, is also a very important area of work under the FHB. There are 3 major points for AF. There is the Sustainable Agricultural Development Fund and the Sustainable Fisheries Development Fund. We have a pilot scheme under these 2 funds, and we are going to launch new pilot schemes to subsidize the local sectors to apply new technology. Now, the second area of work is the Agri-Park. Agri-Park Phase 1 has been completed by phases, and we are starting the preparatory work for Phase 2. The use of technology is just as important. We would promote the application of smart greenhouse and develop advanced precision and automatic hydroponic production technology. We will also promote deep-sea mariculture, setting up a modern demonstration farm in the Tung Lung Chau fish culture zone. So we will continue to press ahead with our work in this area, and we will also take note of latest developments in other jurisdictions. Lastly, animal welfare. We'll propose to amend the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Ordinance to enhance family welfare. It's expected that the amendment bill can be introduced to the Council in the first half of 2022. And I'll give the floor to the next Secretary, Mr. Kevin Yeung. Thank you. I would like to highlight our work in education under the policy address. This government attaches a lot of significance to education. In the past 4 years, recurrent expenditure has increased by $13.5 billion, and there has been various measures covering the whole education system, including teachers' professional development, school curriculum, assessment examinations, progression, and R&D in university, etc. The role of the government in education is not just a provider of resources, but also a policy maker, facilitator, monitor, etc. So we have to support the government, the schools, and we have to monitor teaching and also professional ethics of teachers. Under the 14th Five-Year Plan and rapid development of the GBA, Hong Kong can benefit from this because of our proximity to the GBA, and then young people must be prepared so that they can benefit, and we have to help our students to equip themselves to build up positive values and attitude. They must have a stronger sense of national identity, understand our country, and have a proper understanding of one country, two system. They should develop a sense of national identity and be integrated into the development pattern of a country and contribute to what the country needs so that we can be successful. In the 2021 policy address, there are the following proposals. First, we will fully implement national education, national security education. We'll use multiple pathways and use a complementary model and support schools in education in these areas. We will follow up on school-based programs, enhance teacher training, update the curriculum, provide teaching resources, and organize a diversity of activities to enhance students' understanding of the Chinese culture, Chinese history, national situation, the constitution, basic law, and also national security awareness so that they can have a stronger sense of national identity and understand Chinese culture better, and they can have a stronger sense to maintain national security. And we will enhance media and information literacy and also positive value education. We are going to launch the value education curriculum framework and enhance students' information in literacy. We will ensure students can make use of media and also IT in a responsible manner, and they can also build a positive sense, positive value.
Thirdly, strengthen professional training for teachers. From 2022-23, for public schools, we'll ask them to only hire teachers who have passed the basic law test. We also formulate a code of conduct for teachers and provide actual demonstrations to let teachers know how they can comply with the law and be careful with their words and deeds. And the Education Bureau will make reference to the guideline in reviewing the registration of teachers. We'll follow up seriously any teachers who have actually violated the code of conduct. And we also strengthen core training for teachers and step up cooperation with teacher training institutes so as to enhance the requirements and quality of teacher training. Fourthly, support tertiary education and research. And the government proposes to extend the government matching scheme to 2 years to 2024 July. We will also raise the limit of the graduate enrollment supported by UGC to 100% from 70%. We also invite the UGC to consider actually increasing number of places in graduate school. The government will also support universities in creating more research spaces and support Polytechnic University's plan to turn its Hong Kong Bay campus into a place for academic research and development. The UGC is now preparing its triennium proposals, which include creating more STEM-related courses to nurture innovation technology talents. We also encourage universities to make use of its own resources to utilize its strengths. UGC will also review its funding allocation arrangement to foster universities' development in Greater Bay Area and to let university students be exposed to the opportunities available in GBA. In terms of self-financed tertiary institutions, we have finished consultation on the self-financed tertiary institutions ordinance on the basis of proposals by the Self-Financed Tertiary Institutions Task Force. In 2022, we would submit the legislative amendment to LegCo for their scrutiny. And fifthly, creating more multiple pathways and promotion of vocational and professional education. Project eGene is another channel of studying for secondary school leavers and adults to pursue learning and career development. And the funding for it actually will be extended till 2022-2023, and we review whether we should regularize the funding scheme for Project Eugene. And the government will also collaborate with the sector to try to incorporate more assessment elements and practical learning experiences in VPET so as to further promote VPET. And the government has actually launched some pilot schemes and selected 4 degree courses to join the scheme. At the earliest 2022-2023 academic year, we'll see the launch of those pilot schemes and the degree courses selected. Kindergarten education plan actually, since its implementation in 2017-18, it's been smooth, and it helped parents choose quality kindergarten education and reduce their financial burden. We will implement various optimizing measures, including streamlining, helping kindergartens improve their campus environment, strengthening teachers' professional development, enhancing support and education for parents, and so forth, to continue to optimize our kindergarten education. And seventhly, in line with the government's smart government strategy, from 2023 in stages, we will actually have all the applications for primary 1 and secondary 1 handled electronically, and to increase efficiency for public convenience. We also enhance student information service platform and also provide robots which can provide 24-hour services and answers for queries, and also support mobile platform and app so as to facilitate conversations with parents and enhance the efficiency of answering queries about student financial assistance scheme. Last year, in the policy address, the Quality Education Fund allocated $2 billion to support e-learning, and of which $1.5 billion are reserved for schools to buy computer equipment and online learning devices, including an amount of $310,000 as loans for students. And we will launch actually more resources. And in 2022-2023, we will launch the school recommendation direct admission scheme, so that for individual disciplines, students with special interests and talents can be directly accepted by universities. And this plan now is open for nominations from schools. In December last year, we also reviewed our review of sub-degree education, covering how to better delineating differences between associate degrees, and that is sub-degrees, and higher diplomas, and also to provide for higher diploma courses more practical training, and to increase the participation of the sector, and also to make more flexible adjustment of admission criteria. The review is expected to be completed in 2022. We hope that through various educational measures, we can nurture future young people to be quality talents, and also a new generation with new perspectives, international outlook, and national concepts. Now I hand over the time to Mr. Casper Tway, Secretary for Home Affairs. In the 2021 policy address in relation to Home Affairs, I would give you the highlights now. In the policy address, you may notice that there are suggestions for preliminary ideas of reorganization of government structure. Is also the mention of setting up a culture and sports bureau, which is now sort of handled by the Commerce and Economic Development Bureau. But there is this suggestion to promote Hong Kong as a center for East-West culture exchange. The Home Affairs Bureau may also have the Youth and District Affairs Bureau to actually foster and support youth development, so that there can be a one-stop platform available for that purpose. All these measures, as the Chief Executive said, are intended to invite more discussions. I hope that with the new LegCo, after it's formed in January for the reorganization of bureaus, we will kickstart some discussions in the future months with various stakeholders, including stakeholders in the culture and sports sectors. We would see what the future direction should be upon discussions with them. And once the directions are laid out, we will work towards the reorganization, and there may be actually reallocation, distribution of resources, and even some legislative amendments. But we will do the preliminary work needed first. In the current term government, Home Affairs Bureau is responsible for various spheres of work, including youth development, sports, culture and arts, and some district matters. So we will strive to implement various related measures. And now I'm going to brief you with the content of various policy areas. On youth development, we will invite Youth Development Committee to study existing plans and to launch new subsidy plans to support eligible NGOs to organize programs to nurture positive thinking among young people.
The Youth Development Commission in 2019 improved the funding scheme to subsidize life planning program for young people. They've subsidized 360 organizations. Now, because of the pandemic, we encourage organizations to use online programs now for S6 school leavers and etc. We have helped them to enhance life career planning, and we have given one-off subsidy to 24 organizations. The country cares for our young people. In the 14th five-year plan, there is idea to encourage young people to develop in the mainland, and there are two funding schemes to encourage young people to work and to start a business in the GBA. The funding scheme for youth entrepreneurship in the GBA has subsidized 16 NGOs, benefiting 230 startups and 800 new young people, and 4,000 people have been given incubation and startup support services. These organizations are rolling out their services. Some have already enrolled the first batch of young people to start their business in GBA. And in the GBA, we have also got a GBA scheme. 15 NGOs have been sponsored to have a short-term experimental program. About 600 young people will benefit. And we're going to set up a joint base for startups for young people in GBA, and I will arrange for visits to GBA. And as for sports, the Hong Kong athletes did very well in the Tokyo Olympic Games and also the Paralympics, and also did very well in the 14th National Games. So the government and stakeholders' efforts in the past years have paid off, and I think our direction is correct. I will continue to provide. We've moved towards some professionalism and commercialization. We will support elite athletes, hold mega events, and also promote popular sports. The DPA has said that in 2015 we set up the Commissioner for Sports, and that was a very useful move to promote the development of sports in Hong Kong. As I have reported earlier, now we hope that by mid-2024, the new complex of the Hong Kong Institute of Sports can be completed. It has a floor area of 8,935 square meters. The funding application has been approved by the Finance Committee, the Hong Kong Jockey Club Charities Trust has set up a 300 million scheme for use of technology in sports. Again, that has been approved by Finance Committee. Now, for retired athletes, including athletes with disabilities, and now we'll continue to provide support to them. The transformation scheme for retired athletes have recruited 70 retired athletes, and schools will benefit and will continue to expand the scheme. Our target is within 5 years, we can increase the number of retired athletes participating, increased by 1-fold. We are very grateful to the confidence and support of the central government. So Guangdong, Macau, and Hong Kong will host the 15th National Games in 2025. We will do our very best to host the Games together with the ministries and departments of the central government as well as Macau. And also Guangdong will have a simple and a brilliant and green national sports. Now, we are given the role of a cultural exchange center in Hong Kong. We will have world-class sports facilities and also arts and sports facilities that are pluralistic, and we will make good use of technology and nurture talents. We're going to expand our arts and sports branding. Now, for instance, Basel Festival and Arts and Festival, and we will also have Hong Kong a week to showcase our achievements in this regard and to promote cultural exchange. And will enhance cooperation with overseas and mainland organizations so that valuable exhibits can be displayed in Hong Kong. Will also loan our important exhibits to other important museums. We will also cooperate with the mainland and also other countries so that we can expand our audience base in Hong Kong. And there will also be a list introduced to the quality migrant scheme. Now, by 2023, the East Kowloon Cultural Center will be commissioned. It will use technology, arts technology will be a base for development in this area. The LCSD will set up a center promoting Chinese history and Chinese culture. Together with the History Museum, we can have activities to promote understanding in this regard. We can enhance our young people's understanding and knowledge of Chinese history and Chinese culture. Apart from, they will provide extracurricular learning activities for young people. In the WKCD, we have M+, and also the Palace Museum. They will be commissioned in November this year and mid-2022, respectively. And then other performing venues will be completed in 2024. The WKCD will continue to organize various quality programs, enhance cultural exchange of other places, enrich the cultural life of Hong Kong people, and nurture talents. We'll continue to support the WKCD. We will monitor and assess the development operation of the WKCD authority. We will apply for funding from the Finance Committee for construction of facilities there. And as for district affairs, now in the new territories, there is a lot of Chou Tong land available for development. To unleash the potential of such land, we will set up a working group in this year Together with the Development Bureau and the Hung Yee Kuk, we will review the management of Chow Tong land, and we will safeguard the interests of the Chow Tong. I will want to improve the management of Chow Tong. We hope to complete the review in 1 year and come up with concrete proposals for amendments. District officers have helped many property owners of private buildings to set up OCs under CAP 344 Building Management Ordinance. We targeted buildings with no owners incorporation, building management agencies, etc. In 2019 policy address, it was announced that there can be a subsidy of consultancy fees. Well, having considered PAC's recommendations, the HAD will carry out a pilot scheme. We'll invite NGOs and community organizations with experience in building management to serve these 3 new buildings. We hope that we can start a pilot scheme in the first quarter 25 in Sham Shui Po, and then I will review the effectiveness after 1 year. There is still a lot to say in the policy address, but you can find the details in the supplement. Thank you.
Thank you, secretaries. They cover a lot of areas. So media friends, besides telling us the organization that you're from, so please only ask each secretary one question, so that all the others have chances to ask. Okay, in the second row, lady in light color shirt. Okay, I'm from Stand News. I'd like to ask Mr. Choi. The government just announced that it will DQ another batch of district councillors. What is the reason for DQing them? Why are the reasons not disclosed? The public should know where the red line is. Shouldn't the government actually be responsible for disclosing the reasons? Okay, I already asked questions, from 2 sectors. Well, for issues not related to the policy address, the policy address mentions about the law on fake news. Secretary Choi, what do you think? What constitutes fake news? And the government, why has it not clarified the previous report that it would actually get back salaries from the district councillors? Have the Home Affairs Bureau released those news? And also, for CHK Student Union is going to be disbanded, and there'll be no student union fighting for the welfare of students. Do you think that is a pity? And do you think that what's happening now to the CHK students, are you forcing students to a dead-end road? Well, let's focus on questions related to the policy address. We will deal with other questions if there's time left. Second one, please. I can make a brief response. In the policy address, it mentioned particularly that, it's not the first time I answered this, that in relation to the government's review of, national security and the need for legislation. Well, in the past, in the days ahead, I personally are looking into how the neighboring regions have dealt with fake news. In the policy address, it's written that after collecting those information for reference, we'll see what we can do. Thank you. On this side, please. On this side. Last row in pink. I want to ask which organization you're from. Okay, Now TV. I want to ask Secretary Yang. I can see that you said that starting from the next semester, if there are new teaching staff recruited, they would need to pass the basic law test. So such recruitment condition actually caused a large number of teachers to leave their jobs. So do you think such requirement would reduce the number of teachers willing to join the field? And for existing teachers, would they need to take the basic law test? And I can also see that you're going to have a professional code of conduct. What does it include? What is its content? If teachers do not comply with the code, or if there are complaints against teachers, then would you deal with them according to the code? And some teaching staff at universities and also student unions at universities have ceased operations. Do you think that the Education Bureau needs to, well, please ask each secretary only one question. Okay, well, now another question for Secretary Choi then. You can see that there's a talk of splitting the Bureau. So for youth and district affairs could be separated from sports affairs. So do you think that your Bureau would actually lead to a reduction in your workload? And every time there's the oath-taking exercise and a bunch of district councillors are DQ'd. And you said that once the new term of LegCo members are elected, you start various kinds of work. But are you worried that there may be few people willing to stand for the election for the LegCo? And also with the wedding now, do you think that the oath-taking in the afternoon will be scrapped? Well, in the next semester, starting from the next academic year, actually, for newly recruited teachers, they would need to pass the basic law test. The concept behind is that in the public school sector, the curriculum concerned, there are many chances where the curriculum does involve the basic law, for example, Hong Kong's constitutional status. So in the public school system, teachers working there should have an understanding of the basic law. That's a basic requirement. And we also make reference to recruitment of civil servants. The criteria for passing the basic law, that will be used as a requirement for recruiting new teachers. In the past, civil servants, even with the requirement for basic law test, there hasn't been any difficulties in recruiting our staff. So therefore, I don't foresee any difficulties with recruiting teachers. As for teachers leaving their jobs, we have heard that there are teachers compared to previous year, a larger number of wastage among them. But now that the school term has begun, from what we know from schools on the whole, schools are operating normally, and they have hired enough teachers to do the teaching work. So I think that you don't need to worry. And in the future, the professional code of conduct they're going to lay down, it will be mainly based on the more than 200 cases of misconduct among teachers that we've handled, and also on a regular basis. There are, because of court rulings and other complaints, we dealt with the cases concerned, and based on our experience from those cases, in relation to how we consider what makes an appropriate teacher or whether a teacher complies with the legal requirements. So on the basis of those actual cases, we revamped and also in a more clear way present what we expect from teachers, so that teachers would know more clearly what the Education Bureau or the society expects from them. So in the future, in implementing the education ordinance, in exercising our power, people will have a clear idea and know what we are supposed to do. Okay, in response to the question on reorganization of the Bureau, the Home Affairs Bureau, as I said in my opening remark, in the past years, we have been responsible for culture, sports, youth development, district administration, and other matters. So if I'm correct, the reorganization is for the next term of government. So we've got 9 months left in the current term government. So we'll continue to concentrate on our existing spheres of work. But I'm pleased that Home Affairs, I always said that Home Affairs involves a big family. And now culture and sports, they're like children who've grown up, and they can be catered for in a new family. But they still remain within the government family. But in the cultural realm, you can see that the Cultural Exchange Center proposed under the 14th Five-Year Plan, it also involves cultural industries. And to have some sort of integration, I think it could be beneficial to future development. And the central government also actually has this Culture Tourism Bureau. So we will listen to people's views and see what should be the directions for future development. In the new LegCo, and also in the coming months, we will step up discussions and contacts with stakeholders. On youth and district matters, all along they have been under the ambit of the Home Affairs Bureau, and there are more and more opportunities, including those in Greater Bay Area for young people. So for district administration, it's also worth exploring what constitutes district administration. I believe that well, there will be just more work for us ahead. All I can say is that within my term, in the coming 9 months, what I can do. So we just do the preliminary work well, and once we have the directions, and we will lay the foundation for the next term government. As for arrangement for oath taking, I think the black rainstorm signal is still on now. It's rare to have the black rainstorm on for 2 hours. Well, we will monitor the situation. The most important is to be safe. If needed, we'll make relevant arrangement.
The lady in red.
First is for Dr. Law, because the government has proposed in the MPF offset mechanism that employers only need to pay $3,000 maximum if the first years of their total expenditure on severance and long-term payments do not exceed $500,000. So is that too low and too favorable to the employers? And second question is for Professor Chan. The government is now studying the conditions for COVID patients to discharge. So can you tell us how many people were actually infected by discharged COVID patients? And is it sensible use of healthcare resources to ask COVID patients to stay in isolation for up to 21 days before they are allowed to return to their homes? And the third question is for Mr. Young. Is it fair for only teachers to take the basic law test when there are other industries that are also funded by the government? And do teachers need to take the test every year? And what is the consequences if they fail? Thank you.
Okay, let me take the first question. But let me explain a little bit more about the abolishing the offset mechanism between the MPF and the severance payment, non-service payment. The idea is when we abolish the link between the two, there will be no retrospective effect, which basically means on day one, the amount of long-service payment and severance payment that cannot be offset will start from zero on day one. Okay? No matter how long you work with the employer up to that particular point of time, the amount that cannot be offset starts from zero. So in terms of the first few years, the amount of severance payment and non-service payment will not be large anyway. Okay? Because it starts from zero, and then they will calculate on 2/3 of the monthly salary per year of experience. So that number will not be huge. So $3,000 for the first few years as the cap for the employer in paying the non-service payment or severance payment when it does not exceed $500,000 for the whole year is not too low, but low enough to ensure that the employers were able to pay off out of pocket for that additional payment. So that is a very straightforward answer, because just bear in mind, to start from day one, it will be zero at the very beginning. Okay, thanks.
Okay, regarding the second question about the COVID-19 patient and its discharge criteria. Actually, in the past 21 months, when we are fighting the COVID-19, the government has been adjusting our prevention, preparedness, as well as control plan towards fighting the COVID-19 virus all along, as we assess, the situation, as well as treating the COVID-19 patients and also the quarantine and also isolation period according to the data that we have collected, and also the analysis. So the hospital authority has been reviewing the discharge criteria, the treatment options, as well as the mutant strain of the virus, all along. So I think as far as the discharge criteria is concerned, they have always been reviewing and looking at it and see if the situation warrants any change. So if you look at the data, actually so far there is about 59 patients that is hospitalized in the hospital authority, hospital or treatment facilities so far. So while considering the lengthening of or changing or adjusting the discharge criteria, as well as whether we are going to lengthen the isolation period, either before discharge in looking at ensuring the patient is free from the virus before discharge, as well as having a quarantine period after discharge. I think we are now looking into the situation. Obviously, when we do this, we would also look into the feasibility and also the availability of our quarantine as well as our isolation facilities.
Regarding your third question, we are not asking all the teachers to do a test every year on basic law. What we are proposing is for those starting from next academic year, for those newly recruited into the public schools, we require them to pass a test on basic law, which is very similar to what we have been doing for the civil service. And the reason, as I explained, is because now in our curriculum and in our daily teaching, the constitutional status of Hong Kong and also the content of basic law become part of the daily teaching and also become part of the curriculum in many subjects. So we think that it's necessary for our new teachers to have some basic knowledge about the basic law. That will only facilitate their teaching duties, I think, when they join the teaching force.
好，唔該。咁仲有冇其他問題？
Any other questions? If not, this gentleman in the middle. I'm from Economic Times. Now, new teachers are joining public schools will have to take a basic law test similar to the requirement of the civil service. Would there be a passing score for a teacher who has failed the test? Will he has to resit it? And will the score or will the result be applicable throughout his teaching life? Now, for the MPF abolition arrangement, the capped amount is $3,000 in the first 3 years. Would that be too low if an employee sector will only get $3,000 and for the 4th year is $55,000? Is a discrepancy too much? Now, for teachers, the standard and also the passing score will be very similar to the basic law test applicable to new civil servants. Unless there are new requirements or changes in the basic law test for the civil service, that will remain the same. Now, after a teacher has passed a basic law test and after he has joined the teaching force, if he serves a new teaching post or to another school, he will not be required to retake the test unless there are other changes. In the coming few months, we'll have operational details to announce. I think there are 2 basic law tests for the civil service per year, and I think we will make similar arrangements for prospective teachers. We have to understand the recruitment cycle of schools, and then we will fully tie in with that arrangements. Well, as I said in answering an English question, well, when the new arrangement takes effect, the LSP and SP accrued before the commencement day would still be subject to the abolition arrangement. It's only after the commencement date that the LSP and SP cannot be offsetted with the MPF benefits. So for the first few years, the period of service would be very short. And if you understand that for LSP and SP, the calculation is based on the 2/3 of the monthly salary of the year. So for the first 3 years, is set at $3,000 because we want to provide more assistance in the beginning. That amount is not too low, but we should make it sufficiently low to allow employers enough time to make enough savings in the dedicated savings account. And government subsidy would gradually reduce as the years go on. And I think when employers understand the mechanism better, then the difficulties will reduce. So regarding the capped amount and government subsidy, it would be lower as the years go by. But this is quite technical. The Commissioner for Labour will give a more detailed briefing later to help the media to understand it.
The lady in white at the back. Ming Pao. Secretary Choi, about fake news. Just now you said that, well, it's related to national security, but what about your direction of study? Would you actually look into, how fake news is related to national security? And also for the current term government, would you have any preliminary framework for that available? And also, Dr. Law, for the 4+18 review, what is the direction for that? Is it like this was proposed in 2015? In relation to national security, well, I'm just quoting, what's in national security law in Article 9 says that Hong Kong SAR should strengthen its work in ensuring national security, and also in relation to internet or other areas which could infringe on national security. We need to step our work to prevent any attack on national security. So we need to carry out some study, yes, in relation to fake news, because in some advanced countries, there are relevant laws. In LegCo, I said that, say, for distribution of fake news, that could undermine our efforts to fight against the pandemic, or there could be serious consequences on the financial market, all because of fake news. And for national security, there's concern as well. In the latest policy address, you may note that there is a paragraph which states that the Chief Secretary would actually take forward the work, and the CE also said in an interview that the work concerned would involve various bureaus. In Singapore, when they promulgated the fake news, it had carried out very intensive exchanges, communications with various sectors. So our task right now is to do the study and see what other countries have done in dealing with fake news and what experience they've gained. And also we need to see in Hong Kong what sort of laws would be appropriate for Hong Kong to protect national security. So we'll do the study first. And then we'll report back to you when we know what the next step is. As for 418 review, of course, it will use the discussion in 2015 as the basis. But since then, till now, the key points of the discussion cover two parts. One is 4 and 18. That is continuously 4 weeks and 18 hours per week. These are the precondition for the definition of a contract. And is it possible that these two criteria do not have to be met at the same time? Well, there is suggestion that it can be replaced by 72 hours. So whether it's continuously for 4 weeks and 18 hours per week, or just 72 hours in total, that's an option. And also, there are more and more freelancers in society now, and maybe freelancers may not do 72 hours of work in 4 hours. So some rights of employees, can they be legally looked at on a pro rata basis? So that forms another direction for discussion. So employers and employees together must actually be willing to have compromise in their actually discussion. But the government has no stance on it yet. A question here on this side, on the last row. Cable news. Secretary Chen, on the conditions for opening up border with Guangdong, would Hong Kong government reviewed is or amended its quarantine conditions, and will there be a health code be used here or only used in the mainland? Will it have tracking function? And also the third question for Kevin Yeung, for the test for government school teachers, would it be extended to cover teachers in private schools? And also, some young people feel that they may not have a chance to speak out now with the closure of the CHK student union. What do you think of that? And also for the dequeuing of district councils, why don't you disclose the reason for this dequeuing the district councils? What are the reasons? Why can't you be more transparent? Thank you for your questions. As for reopening the border with China, in the past, under the joint prevention approach, the chief secretary actually led a group to have exchanges with their mainland counterparts on September 26. They had frank discussions on the policies on both sides in relation to preventing cases of COVID-19. In the current situation, reopening the border is a top priority for us. On the one hand, we need to continue to have zero infections in Hong Kong to create a good basis for reopening the border. And secondly, should the border be reopened, we have to make sure that we would not bring additional risks to the mainland. So therefore, even though we have different systems, we hope that in our joint effort to fight the pandemic, we need to make sure that we are actually sharing the same approach. In summing up our experiences and in relation to the mainland policies, well, on the mainland, they have a lot more data available in relation to COVID-19, so the exchanges have been rather fruitful and good opportunity for both sides to actually sum up their experiences and to learn from each other. So we will strive to do what is needed and carry out and take forward our work. And also, we are trying to prevent importation of cases and the spread of COVID-19 domestically. And we also, of course, have to look at how to deal with clinical cases, and we exchange views in those areas with the mainland. Health code, of course, is also under discussion. You may have heard that Secretary Sid from the Innovation Technology Bureau, he said that they have been reviewing the work on the health code. in support of our fight against the pandemic. Technically speaking, efforts have been made and explorations are underway. As for preventing importation of cases and spread of COVID-19 here, including what you said, like arrangements for exempted individuals or patients about to be discharged, some clinical adjustments. Well, we are actually studying what adjustments could be made. In the past 21 months, in light of the overall pandemic situation and under the principle of being scientifically based and the mutation in the virus concerned, we have actually, in light of the changes, kept adjusting our measures. So right now, in our liaisons with the mainland, well, we have had constructive exchanges, and we will strive to do what is needed to have the border reopened.
On basic law tests for teachers, we will start with public schools, but in the long term we'll gradually cover other schools. On oath-taking, myself and the chief executive have set out the requirement many times. This is nothing new, but I can read out to you. The purpose of the oath-taking ordinance is to implement the basic law and also the national security, and to defend the constitutional order of Hong Kong, and all relevant factors will be taken into account. And whether we will have the negative and positive list. For negative checklist, to done anything that threaten national safety, that doesn't accept the PRC and advocate independence of Hong Kong, collusion with external forces, desecration of the national emblem and also national flag. Details have been set out in all letters. Individual members of the media said that I haven't set out the reasons. That is not correct. I have replied in all relevant correspondence. If there is any offenses, then we will refer such cases to the law enforcement departments for follow-up. Thank you. I think Mr. Young has something to add. Well, since Mr. Choi has taken a question not related to the policy address, perhaps I may say a few words about the student union of CUHK. Well, in secondary and universities, there are very often student unions. They are set up for various purposes. Some to organize activities, some to provide services to doctors, to students, some to help schools to collect views of students on schools. Each organization has its objective and mission and its rules, and also the practice to follow when it wants to dissolve. So all organizations are entitled to their own decisions as to how to deal with their own organizations. Having said so, whether these organizations are set up to serve or to provide service, or they have to abide by Hong Kong laws, and they have to abide by rules and regulations, because they are student organizations, and therefore they have to abide by school rules. On the relation between the Student Union and the Chinese University of Hong Kong. This is entirely a matter for the university itself. The university can act according to its ordinance and the powers under the ordinance and take action the school or the university deems appropriate. We fully support the university. And upon dissolution of the student union, I'm sure the university will provide sufficient services to students, including supporting affiliated societies of the student union and to maintain communication with students through established liaison channels. I'm sure the university can continue to receive views from students. I'm not worried. Even with the dissolution of the student union, I'm not worried that direct services to students will be negatively affected. I hope you can respect this. We talked about autonomy of universities. This is entirely an internal matter for the university, and we respect the decision of the university. We have taken more than 10 questions related to policies and also taken two other issues. And because we have another technical briefing, so the press conference ends here.